Hi everyone and welcome back. When you get a new greyhound, losing a few nights' sleep can often be part of the settling experience. Hopefully that's all it is and you soon get to settle into a new routine with your pet. But if the nighttime disturbances continue, what is that actually doing to you? Although I haven't acquired a new greyhound recently, I've been having a pretty tricky time with Gandalf and it's made it very difficult to get much sleep at all. When I was younger, lack of sleep didn't bother me that much. I've always been a bit of a night owl, preferring to go to bed late and getting up later, and I would regularly pull an all nighter if circumstances warranted it, with no significant effects the next day. As I've got older, that has changed, and although I still prefer to operate on the late shift, I don't cope well if I don't get at least 5 or 6 hours a night, preferably a bit longer. And it also takes me a lot longer to recover from a bad night if I do get one. If I'm woken up 2 or 3 times in the earlier parts of the night, I am then wide awake. Whether that's at 2 o'clock or 5 o'clock, it makes no difference. Sleep is not going to happen again. It's like I've had my chances to doze off and I won't be getting any more. What are you doing, Anna? Come over here. Come on. Good chap. The detrimental effects of sleep deprivation on the body and the mind are well known. And in that long, dark night time of sleeplessness, I found myself drawn to reading up on what this lack of sleep was actually doing to me. It's recognised it can affect both your mental abilities and your physical health. During sleep, your body gets on with some essential housekeeping duties. In the brain, connections are made to help you remember new information. Your immune system produces antibodies and cytokines to help you fight infection. Your cardiovascular system heals and repairs. Your blood pressure is balanced and your inflammation levels are controlled. Your endocrine system is also balancing the production of hormones. So, all in all, sleep is important for keeping you on an even keel. If you have a lack of sleep, it can cause you to feel short tempered or intolerant, to be absent minded and forgetful, and also more prone to mood swings. It causes imbalances between the leptin and the ghrelin in your digestive system, which are the hormones that control appetite. So, it makes you prone to weight gain because you want to eat more. In the extreme, it can lead to depression, to paranoia, and suicidal thoughts, or doggicidal thoughts, perhaps in my case. Long term, it can increase your risk of diabetes as it affects your response to glucose and insulin, and it's also implicated in heart disease. Doesn't sound too good, does it? Some of these things are tangible. I can certainly vouch for the brain fog, the inability to think straight, the lack of tolerance towards things I would normally brush off, and the tendency to become upset easily. If you have a dog that's keeping you awake at night, you might want to check out my video on getting a good night's sleep with a greyhound for ideas on how to help them to sleep better so you can sleep better too. And I've linked that one in the description below. The main problem I've been struggling with, one which I suspect may be an issue for other owners as well, is actually disturbed sleep rather than insomnia. I don't normally have a problem going to sleep to start with. It's just that Gandalf or sometimes Meggie wakes me up later and I then can't go back to sleep after that disruption. Sometimes, to be completely contrary, I find myself resisting going to sleep because I'm listening out. It's almost as if I want the disturbance to happen before I doze off so that I won't be disturbed, which of course is totally counterproductive because then I get even less sleep. So I might be resting for 7 or 8 hours, but precious little of that time is actually spent asleep. And in the morning, I really can feel as if I haven't slept at all. Our sleep follows a series of cycles, and being woken up in certain parts of that cycle can make you feel much worse than if you're woken up in other parts. After an initial few minutes dozing off, we tend to move into a stage of light sleep, and this is where brain activity changes and eye movement stops. We spend about half of our night in this phase, And this is interspersed with a deeper sleep, which is characterized by delta brain waves. And this is when it's harder to be woken up when we're in this deeper sleep. This deep sleep is a restorative phase where the body repairs itself. And we spend more than half our time in this phase earlier in the night, with increasingly shorter periods later on. The fourth type of sleep is REM sleep, responsible for good cognitive function, such as memory and for learning. And this is when dreams tend to occur. It doesn't tend to start until you've been asleep for about 90 minutes. So you can see that depending on when you're woken up in the night and how long your periods of sleep are, you're going to get more or less of different parts of the sleep cycle, and therefore more or less of the bits that are important for you to feel good the next day. The problem with having your sleep frequently interrupted is that your body doesn't get enough time in the deeper phase and in the REM phase, and it's thought that lack of these types of sleep is what causes the physical and mental effects on your body and mind. If, like me, you find it hard to get enough sleep because you are struggling to doze off again after you've been woken up, what do the experts recommend in that situation? This is a bit different to typical insomnia where you can't go to sleep in the first place. It's I'm fine going to sleep, I just can't stay asleep because the dogs are disturbing me. One of their suggestions is to keep the room cool, dark, and free of pets. Well, that's not easy if your greyhound will disturb you if you don't let them sleep with you. Personally, I find it's less disruptive to sleep a bit nearer the dogs because I can manage not to wake myself up quite as much if I have to do something to assist them in some way during the night. I can almost do it on autopilot, half asleep, and then go back to bed and be asleep again quite quickly. If I have to come downstairs in the cold, if I have to switch on lights and so on, that wakes me up even more than if I can just kind of stumble off the sofa, deal with it and crawl back under the covers. It's certainly worth taking the usual advice for good sleep though. So if you're less likely to be disturbed for reasons other than your dog, you will still do better to get more sleep. Things like avoiding heavy meals late at night, avoiding caffeine and lots to drink late at night, so you're less likely to need the loo. Late night exercise can also be bad for your ability to go to sleep as it tends to boost adrenaline production. And of course, that's not what you need when you're trying to relax. Your nose is dripping floppy. If you have a dog that needs to go out for a last walk, as opposed to nip in the garden, then you might want to think about the timing of that. How can you minimize the impact of that last walk on your ability to go to sleep? Can you maybe make it a bit shorter? Can you go a bit earlier? Is there something you can do to address that if that walk is waking you up just at the time you need to be dozing off? For me, finding time to lie down and relax at some point during the day helps me cope, even if I don't go to sleep in that time. It might be 20, 30 minutes earlier. It might be a little bit more, but you're not supposed to do that for very much longer. They only recommend really a cat nap. And even if you're just lying down, it helps your body recharge a little bit rather than persevering and pushing through. If it's at night, then I tend to just lie in bed and focus on my steady breathing because it is more restful than what your brain gets up to otherwise, things like researching the things I've been sharing with you in this video. If I really can't doze off, then I tend to give up trying. I find it is more helpful to get up or be properly awake and do something useful rather than try to go to sleep at that point because I'm not going to go to sleep. It is frustrating though, because I know I'm going to lose time the next day through not feeling up to doing stuff. I might as well make myself useful in the night instead. And yes, that might be doing things on my phone or with a screen. Although a lot's been said about the problems of blue light from screens late at night, with the more modern phones and tablets and so on, that is nothing like the issue that it was. And I have seen evidence to suggest that it's not such a big problem these days. I do find that finding something really tedious to read is a very good way of sending me back to sleep. One thing I don't do though is switch the lights on because that definitely gets me fully awake. So I tend to do it with quite dim lighting. I wish I had an answer to all of this. If I had, I'd certainly be trying out those answers myself. So if this is something you have struggled with and have any tips for getting back to sleep after your dog has woken you up in the night, please pop them in the comments because we'd love to hear them and try them out ourselves. That's all for today. Thanks for being here. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now. Is it lunchtime then? Is that why you're standing up because you're bored and it's lunchtime? Oh, the nose is drippy. Oh, yuck.